let's get into this conversation straight away. Honorable Minister, let me get to you. Reading the Daily on Sunday, you were at the top of it, especially telling us exactly what we need to be able to discuss. You're talking about presidential term limits, you're talking about open vetting, you're talking about the affirmative action to have 2 term limits there, proportionate representation, members electing the presidency. These are some of the suggestions. Give us a brief of these suggestions and where do they come from? What's the spirit behind them?
Even though those ideas have been attributed to me, they are not necessarily mine. Over the years, Ugandans have come up with a lot of proposals. So let me give you the sources of these proposals. Number 1 is what was proposed by the Professor Sempebwa Constitutional Review Commission. Mm-hmm. Many of the proposals were not implemented. So that is a source book for us. 2, we have a number of private members' bills that have been mooted, but the standard response from the front bench of the government has been that we are coming with comprehensive reforms, so don't jump the gun. The 3rd source is from the Supreme Court in the Amama Mbabazi case. The Supreme Court came up with 10 proposals. If you allow me, I will share them briefly. The other source is from political parties. Political parties have made proposals. And other institutions, for instance, the traditional institutions of Uganda, cultural institutions. Now, I start with the one of the Supreme Court. The ones of the Supreme Court relate to adjudication of disputes also. Naturally, when there is a contest, there is bound to be a petition by one side alleging that there has been cheating. So the Supreme Court made some provisions, matters of discussion, and some of these are constitutional. They gave their guidance on the time for filing and determination of petitions. They said that the provisions of the Constitution are inadequate. They are saying that within 30 days, the court cannot gather and analyze evidence and make a decision. So they have proposed that that period should be reviewed. That is under the Presidential Elections Act. They have proposed that. In fact, they have proposed 60 days. If the parliamentarians agree, that will be the change. So that the courts take up their real role. An election petition, especially the presidential election petition, is not a normal election petition. In fact, the courts are supposed to inquire. It is more or less an inquiry. They are not just supposed to restrict themselves to even the evidence which is filed. They are supposed to step out and really look at anything that may help them come up with a good conclusion. Of course, we have to consider the time within which the president must be sworn in. And I think in Uganda, the swearing in normally takes place much later after the elections. Therefore, this is a reasonable proposal. They also talk about the nature of evidence. Normally it is by affidavit. The courts say that we should admit oral evidence. In other words, those who have witnessed election rigging should come to court and talk and to be cross-examined. They also made recommendations on the time for holding fresh elections. the law says if a presidential election is annulled, fresh election must be held within 20 days. They are proposing a more realistic and therefore a longer period, more than 20 days. The other one is the one which is really at the heart of the debate, even in cabinet, the use of technology. I have stated here before that the Ministry of Justice prepared amendments to the law to make electronic voting compulsory, and also introducing 2 levels of biometrics. That is your facial eyelids, that is, and fingerprints, so that if one is not accurate, the other one can work. We have even gone as far as proposing that the presiding officers should wear body cameras. With body cameras, whatever is going on at the polling station will be on record. The debate became contentious because apparently many people believe that when you introduce technology, you lose control. In reality, this is a law that the president supports. He is actually fully on board, but there were a number of ministers who had lots of reservations, so the proposal was referred to a committee. Now, this can only work if we act very quickly to enact this law. Mark you, if you introduce technology, that means you must also train those who will use the technology. You cannot enact the law 2 months to elections and then you expect that you will have people who are properly trained. Also, the voters need to be sensitized, including other stakeholders. The Supreme Court also took note of the unequal use of state-owned media. That means your very own UBC and other state-owned radio stations. Now, under the Presidential Elections Act, Section 24(1), the law is good. It says that presidential candidates shall be given equal time and space on state-owned media. I was a presidential candidate, and I can assure you, I never had equal time. That should make us note that it's not just about the law also. You can have the best laws, but if there's no political will to implement them, then you may as well not have laws. UBC was singled out for condemnation by the Supreme Court of Uganda. They said that UBC failed in its duty. So what does the Supreme Court recommend? Sanctions. That if you fail to give equal time, there should be sanctions. So we have to have those proposals to punish officials who block opposition political figures from accessing public media. The other condemnation from the Supreme Court is about late enactment of legislation. That one, we plead guilty. And we hope we'll be given a light sentence since we are working on it. It's not the Electoral Commission which is to blame. It is the government which is supposed to initiate these laws, because most of these laws have massive financial implications. So backbenchers definitely are barred by the Constitution from making these proposals for enactment of the laws. As a result, we end up with last-minute, hastily enacted laws which require amendment even before the ink has dried on the assent signature. The Supreme Court also made some recommendations on donations. I have listened to you people discussing the commercialization of politics. Right now, heads of parastatals that are planning to contest, they now send donations during fundraisings through their local agents. You find somebody is an executive director, somebody is a managing director, somebody is a top official, and they now want to become parliamentarians. And because they may have access to state resources, they can only now build up their name recognition by sending huge donations. I have been in fundraisings where people who are not politicians are announcing donations of 30 million in one fundraising. Most of the members of parliament who are incumbents are struggling. They cannot afford that. So the proposal states that you can only solicit funds to organize for election during the campaign period. And of course, we know that the president is a very generous donor before, during, and after elections. Now, if a president is an incumbent and he has a platform of a candidate,
And a chest.
obviously he will have an unfair advantage over others. So the purpose of this proposal is to create a level playing field.
Okay.
So the Supreme Court proposes that the giving of donation by all candidates should be prohibited. That is what. But I've also heard the president complaining that it is also becoming too much even for him. That's why the Parliamentary Committee on Government Assurances has a long list of unfulfilled pledges from the office of the president. The last two concerns the involvement of public officers in political campaigns. From my own experience, many people who have government jobs believe that it is their duty to keep the government in power. It's a natural instinct. But the purpose of a civil service is that they're supposed to be a kind of a welcome and farewell committee. They welcome the new government and professionally brief them on what they are supposed to do. And then they also see off the outgoing government. A story is told of a lady who has served in the office of the president for very long, a lady called Margaret Lalam. When the NRA took over, she didn't run away. She was waiting for the new occupant to tell them that, look, I am here so that you can function. Because you need people to tell you. There may be passwords that you need to share. You may have to receive keys. There may be assets that the new people need to take care of. If Uganda were to be a nuclear power, you must give the nuclear code to the new president. So, fortunately, we are not. So the Supreme Court has proposed that public servants should be prohibited from being involved in political campaigns, and that there should also be sanctions against those who campaign. Now, there's a particular group of public servants called resident district commissioners. Those are public servants according to the law, but in reality and in fact, they all become campaigners and mobilizers. So these are the recommendations of the Supreme Court. That's why I stated at the beginning that even though they are attributed to me because I'm the one talking about them, in reality, I am simply letting people know that we have compiled these provisions, and I'm going to be meeting the Uganda Law Reform Commission so that I see the latest compilation. We, of course, have got to go and brief the president about these proposals. We get his input, and then together with the cabinet secretariat, we prepare the papers for cabinet.
Okay.
As far as we are concerned, we actually have the proposals. If we are going to carry out public consultations, they don't have to be too long, because most of these proposals, particularly those that you are referring to, which are really about the constitution, they are proposals that are not necessarily about elections. They are about the constitution, but we also need civic education.
Okay.
In the budget of Electoral Commission, there is virtually no money for civic education. We have been proposing that political parties allow the Electoral Commission to use their platform to educate those who gather for rallies. I don't know how that can work, but it's a cheaper way. If the Honorable Medad Segona is addressing a big rally, immediately after prayers, he can say, let us have an official to tell you how to exercise that right. Not that spoiled ballots are so many. Do you know that a lot of the ballots are spoiled, basically because of lack of civic education, and then because of rumor mongering and now social media, stories of rigging can start even before the polls open.
Let's come back to that, Honorable. Let me bring in Dr. Sarah here. Doctor, you have listened to the references he has spoken about Supreme Court, Justice, different commissions that were there. But I also want to add to what he has said. 2016, we had 15.2 million voters. 9.8 were valid. We had 8 million people that did not vote. That was about 35%. 2021, 18.1. Only 10.3 were valid. 8 million did not vote, coming to about 44%. When you hear his reforms, when you hear these reforms, will they yield anything?
Well, Honorable Mao has presented a range of reforms, both for the Constitution and the electoral laws. They sound good on paper. I saw a quote in a Saturday, New Vision, where he was quoted as an outsider inside the cabinet. And he's speaking as an outsider inside the cabinet because he's yet to have a discussion in cabinet. One would have assumed that a minister, when he speaks to the public, is communicating a cabinet position. But this is still a ministerial position. It's, if I understood him well, it's not yet a cabinet position on reforms. Among the references he was making, he forgot where we partnered with him as part of the political parties on the compact for free and fair.
Compact.
Yeah, for free and fair elections, civil society,
Yes.
organizations and the political leaders, where they moved all over the country from gathering views on what the Uganda we want in terms of constitution and electoral reforms. The compact is still also gathering dust. I want to go straight to the proposals that Honorable Mao, some of them that he has explained. First is to say that the Supreme Court proposals were implemented partially, partly through the Magezi bill, where he picked a few of the legal petition timelines to escort the age limit bill and try to sanitize it. So a few of the reforms in terms of time to petition, time to file, those extensions were delivered through the age limit bill, and now an act, the Constitution Amendment Act of 2017. We also had partial implementation when Professor Sempewa and another went back to the Supreme Court in the court of contempt, application. you know, where they were asking for the arrest of the Attorney General, or the Attorney General to show cause on why he had not implemented the reforms in a given timeline. And a few other reforms were implemented in a rushed manner ahead of 2021 elections in electoral reforms. The two pending reforms from the Supreme Court recommendations is the punishment of public officials who engage in partisan conduct and campaigns, and the other on the regulations or the legal framework for use of technology that Honorable Mao says is before cabinet. These two are the pending reforms from the Supreme Court directives. When you come to the reform, for example, for parliament or proportional representation or parliament MPs to elect a president, it suggests a shift from the hybrid presidential system that we have to a parliamentary system. I don't know whether this proposal at this stage describes the nature of parliamentary system that we should have, because there are types. The common types of parliamentary systems are three. We have the Westminster system, where you have elect parliament, and then the majority leader becomes a prime minister, minority leader becomes leader of opposition, or minority leader, depending on the name, and you have government formed in that manner. And the other key characteristic of this type of parliamentary system is that a parliament can be dismissed through a vote of no confidence. We have this in the UK, Canada, India, Australia, and New Zealand, and it would be good to know, is this the way we want to go? We also have other types, like the consensus system, where there is power sharing, and this is normally common in societies that are so divided either according to tribe or according to minorities, and you come up with a power sharing arrangement or broad representation of the several categories of people, or a coalition government. And this is common in countries like Belgium and others. The third common type is a parliamentary republic, where you have a head of state is separate from a head of government, and the president has limited powers, and it's only a prime minister who is answerable to parliament. This is the system in Germany, Italy, Greece, and Portugal. But we also have the South African example, where you have a parliamentary republic system. The president is a head of state and head of government, but you have a bicameral parliament with the National Assembly and the council at the provincial level or lower assembly. And you have some people elected directly, others chosen according to the party that has won. So if you have, for example, President Ramaphosa winning 59%, then they will control 59% of parliament. You have the other parties also, according to the percentage that their party get, is the portion that their parliament controls. So maybe as the debate unfolds, it would be important to know what is it that they are proposing.
Okay.
And you look at other proposals, like a 2-term limit. I think really this has been on table for long. But I want to briefly comment on the affirmative action, the term limits for affirmative action. Honorable Mao is proposing that all affirmative action seats should have a 2-term tenure. There are different categories of these affirmative seats. Whereas it's true that the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution, recommended a review of these affirmative action seats every 10 years. Yeah, but you know, it has, I don't know whether they've been reviewed or we've just been endorsing them the way they are. But for example, youth by nature, it's 1 term. I've not seen an MP who becomes a youth MP who becomes a youth and then runs again for youth. Those ones, the age cut them out, and we might not need to bother with them. But also there are calls from young people to say, we need to remove these seats. If the youth are indeed the majority, according to census, about 72% partial results are young people. 72% of our population are young people. The demographics, the aggregated data from the voter register, we are likely to have 80% of voters as youth.
Thank you very much.
And then the question is, I want to conclude. The question is, are these minority or they need some kind of other affirmative action? The second category that is interesting to look at as I conclude is the army. How did the army come into parliament? According to the 1995 UPDF Act, the army was referred to as listening posts in the movement system. Movement system where we had broad representation. They came into the parliament as listening posts. Here we are in a multi-party dispensation, and you have the army. Now they are no longer listening posts, and they sit with the ruling party. Yet the constitution demands that the army must be non-partisan and non-political. Isn't it time to get them out of a political arena?
Thank you very much. Let me come to Honorable Lydia Bonyoto there. Honorable Lydia, when you hear these proposals, as they are still proposals right now, and look at come October, we'll have hardly 12 months to nominations of presidential candidates. What do you make of them, and can they make headway?
According to the National Electoral Commission calendar, it's exactly 12 months to the nominations of members of parliament, because they start on the 17th and today is the 18th. So this conversation maybe is meant to just set the mood, but many of the proposals, in my humble opinion, I like the reminder about, I've read the Citizens Compact was very interesting. I've been referring to it many times. It had very good proposals, but they've been on table. It's one of those areas, and it looked like it had been very well participatory and conclusive. People went around, civil society organizations, individuals, the elders. So it has a futuristic arrangement and a spirit. But for me, the timing, I mean, what can you do in 1 year? First of all, between now, I'm talking about nominations for members of parliament. If the calendar does not change, would have been done by 17th or 18th, which is today, is exactly 12 months. Now, before that, political parties themselves should begin processes of preparing their own election processes and stuff like that, while the electoral getting ready to compete for power. So there's actually no time to look at the big picture. Even if you wanted to get quorum in parliament now, it's going to be a battle. And some of the proposals, in my humble opinion, would require a referendum. I know that Article 1 talks about the power of the people and that it can be vested in 2 other elected leaders, but there are fundamental issues you cannot just leave for parliament. Will require a referendum.
Like what reforms would require a referendum?
You cannot talk about changing a presidential system, and you just go to have election. They done it by members of parliament. This is now personal, because now people are asking: is Mao speaking as a president of DP, as a Ugandan, or as a minister? Sometimes we come here as individuals because we have our own rights as nationals to make an opinion. So I'm saying that there are some proposals which are now a subject of debate now, which cannot just be left to parliament. I would not support changing a system of presidential elections without going for a referendum. And you know what referendum means? It is heavy, takes time.
Election.
It's more or less a general election. So you cannot now fix that within the 12 months when we are going for general elections. So one of the, I've just kind of share one of the biggest challenges we have is to shelve very important lessons learned of the previous general elections, and then they are brought up just at the doorstep of another general election. Mistakes are bound to be made, and now where are our priorities? Our priorities now to prepare for the general elections or to prepare for the amendments, because they all cost money. I'm told that the Electoral Commission now has a shortfall of their budget. They released the calendar, attached a budget, and they had rolled out their budget depending on the quota and the releases. They could be behind some of the scheduled activities, not because they don't want to work or they're not ready, but because the resources are not commensurate to the calendar. Now we are whatever we are proposing now also has cost implications. So is this conversation just to excite the public and to set people into the mood, or are we serious about what we want to do for the good of the country and for the governance tenets of our country? These are debates. But because of this now, you can see that it has now even become an agenda for debate. So the conversation is beginning, and we are setting now the country into the mood of electioneering. Parties are now starting to look at delegates conferences, beginning to have structures of elections, ultimately have flag bearers, and begin campaigns. Now, where does this leave the reforms that we think should be growing? So my humble opinion is that this debate should have begun in 2021, July. You do what they call in the military action after review, AAR. We've just come from an election. What are the changes, whether by court or experience from the field? If I had a chance, I would really want us to build onto building electronic, the IT methods of work into the election process, including not only voting, even vote counting.
Yeah.
Many people lose elections through declaration forms, filling, and vote counting. And let me tell you why many people lose elections. The manipulation, these polling stations are out in the compounds of schools or churches or mosques, faith-based compounds. Now, they begin by tallying the vote of the presidential. These Maos were 27, I think, in the last election. They count all of them one by one, one by one. By the time you finish the presidential election candidates, tallying, and you fill the declaration, then you sign. The process is too long, it's manual. Then you got the county MP, same day, isn't it?
Yes.
So by the time you get to 7 o'clock, it's dark. You are now beginning to count the woman member of parliament. You are using small phones, this katochi. Why would people be manipulated? By the time you finish counting the woman MP, it's around 1 a.m.
Yeah.
So we have not provided for, when it is dark, can you bring the elections, vote counting the next day? Or can you not?
Where would the ballots?
So there is that area is too gray, and there is huge abuse of vote counting. This one I can tell you, and you can take to the bank. Because I was very surprised in one constituency which was following as a candidate of parliamentary. One constituency had 27 candidates. Another constituency has 12 candidates. And they must count one by one. An agent, they show you. They show. By the time you finish counting just one seat, and then you tally, and then you pack, and then you fill the forms, and then you seal off. It's dark. There are no lighting. The Electoral Commission is so limited. So candidates suffer. If you don't have lanterns in every polling, my polling stations are 276. And why God provide the lanterns for every polling station? 276 lanterns or bulbs or whatever it is in open grounds. So I think that electronic should be invested in. But my only problem is the capacity for our country to be able to not only afford to procure, to test, to train, so that we invest heavily. So the electronic should be able to make it efficient, and that results should be instant, especially the aspect of voting, but also counting and tallying.
Thank you very much. Honorable Seguna, let me come to you.
But the time is not there. You have 12 months to go.
Your response, and I quote you verbatively, you said on affirmative action, yes, we should impose it, because if they have not been emancipated enough, there is something fundamentally wrong. Correct. When you hear these reforms and your comment made, what do you make of them?
Good point.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much. And I'm happy today to engage in the same debate with the Honorable Norbert Mao. I think Sarah has summarized Norbert very well, an outsider in cabinet. And why I'm very happy is because he led a team. We worked together to develop that compact.
Yes.
It's very comprehensive.
Yes.
Very, very comprehensive.
I've seen it.
And it was consultative enough. That's number one. Number two, I think one common denominator from the discussion so far is that the time is not enough, and I do not want to hold Genome 7 innocent on this. Seated where I am, I don't know what Norbert Mao seated where he is. One day we had a debate here in the studios, and I was saying, look at the contradiction. On the one hand, the president is saying, what Norbert Mao is talking about, I don't know, we have never discussed that. And Norbert was saying, no, we did discuss that. In 2015, following the movements we made across the country to generate the Citizens Compact, and that was about 4 years after the compact had been compiled and submitted to government. We were promised robust, comprehensive, constitutional and legal stroke electoral reforms. They were nowhere to be seen. I remember writing a minority report on this, reproducing the entire Citizens Compact as Shadow Minister for Justice. In the 10th Parliament, same thing. The Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, was insistent and said, no, you bring these reforms. But if you don't bring them, I'm going to allow private members to do so. And as Norbert quoted, right under Article 93, we have limitations as private members. Because once a bill has financial implications, you are not allowed to step there. So we relied on the goodwill and sincerity of government. Of course, you could not see that. You cannot have that. I remember, and I repeat again here, when the Honorable Fred Ruhindi made an undertaking on the floor of Parliament, to the effect that immediately after the next election, we shall come up with a Constitutional Review Commission. The same statement was repeated by another decent man, Ndugu Hakana. Time. Because time has a bearing on the financial preparation. As Lydia says, the Electoral Commission has issued a roadmap accompanied by a budget, but already the Electoral Commission is complaining of the budget shortfall. The entire country has a budget shortfall, by the way. Because in July, I saw a statement issued by the PSST when he made the release for Q1. Remember, if you have a budget of, is it 72 something trillion, you expected in a quarter to have released 18 trillion. I think it was supposed to be 18.5. And he said, I think he had released 5 trillion. Meaning, you already have a shortfall of 13.5 trillion in Q1. In Q2, therefore, we expect you to release 18.5 plus 13.
About 31 trillion.
13.5, about 31, 32 trillion. Now, it cuts across the entire economy. With that, you do not expect the Electoral Commission to be able to afford the kind of budget based on the projections that are coming out of this bill. The recent example of WUBOS in census should teach us, if we intend to learn. On day 1 and day 2, the enumerators were crying across the entire country that the gadgets were not working. If these gadgets in any way depend on electricity, we should go back to revisit where we come from, and please tell me about the load shedding. And tell me if these gadgets are going to work. How about the distribution of the network across the country? The supplier is in shambles and tatters. But you're promising me and exciting me that you're bringing a digital system of election. The computers that we've been using at polling stations have all been collapsing. Now, after voting, what happens? I mean, if you've been reading elections, the physical paper election, including where I have a DR form signed by everybody, and some officers of the Electoral Commission go and forge a DR form. I handled an election petition in Kampala Central. I handled an election petition in Kalungu district, where officials of the Electoral Commission went out of their way to print, go type and print a declaration of results form. And the Electoral Commission goes out of its way to certify those ones and refuse to certify one given to another candidate and plucked out of that book. So how are Ugandans going to be able, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to go digital. It's a good thing. But two things. One, the trust and confidence that when it comes to sending those documents by email, you will send the right results. Number two, that we're not going to have incidents like the one we had in Nakuru, where the Lord Mayor Asukwago and Dr. Veside had to be arrested because they went to do what they called intercepting a system that was interfering with the elections, with the election results. So it doesn't stop at voting. It goes beyond voting to transmission and declaration of results. I went somebody who was in charge of the elections in a particular region, and I will not mention the region for his safety, and said, for me, those results you are reading in Kampala, you know where you got them from. We were not involved. At some point, you saw the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, okay, being told, you read this. So once you do not have the faith and confidence in the system, that one is failure number one. Dead on arrival. I have had colleagues, Sarah and Lydia, talk about this proportional representation, the method of voting for president. I did not hear Honorable Norbert Mao talk about it. I only read about it in the papers. And I did not want to believe that somebody can even dream of changing the voting system in 1 year to go. 1 year to go. And again, more disturbing, today, you hear my the Honorable Norbert Mao say, on the one hand, the president is in support. On the other hand, we are going to compile and take to cabinet. So where are we? Has cabinet cleared this, or they are still the thoughts of Ministry of Justice stroke the Honorable Norbert Mao, because he went with these views anyway before he joined the cabinet. Do not forget that we are talking about electoral reforms which were simply selectively picked after the decision of the Supreme Court, and trying to say as if they were compliant. The core of the proposals, actually directives of the Supreme Court, as enumerated ably by the minister, were not considered. We are talking about changing the cosmetic change of the name to something called Independent Electoral Commission and so on and so forth. As Sarah said, nobody is talking about the role of the army. You see army, soldiers, voting and ballot stuffing, grabbing ballots at a polling station. I have talked about it, and I remember we had a heated debate with my brother, the Honorable Captain Babu. And, taking, forcefully inserting them in the box and walk away with it. As Norbert says, this has nothing to do with the law. Because who doesn't know that ballot stuffing is illegal? Who doesn't know that pre-ticking is illegal? Who doesn't know that the soldiers are not supposed to participate in partisan elections? Who doesn't know that RDCs are actually bad? It is about the spirit of constitutionalism. It is about the love of our country. Who doesn't know that you're not supposed to stone another person because of an election? We all know that. One, we are just selfish, and including the president. Two, people have criminal dispositions. Three, we are acting in bad faith. Do you want to tell me that for something we've been talking about since 2011, because mainly this debate started in 2010 before the 2011 election, do you want to tell me that the president is waking up to realize that this is necessary today?
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable. Let me come to Honorable Captain Francis Babu. Captain, you already talked about the cats and the dogs. That's Springfield. But let's come to here.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Pets.
Let's the pets.
And pets, you know.
Let's come back home. When you hear these reforms, constitutional reforms, electoral reforms, are these the pain points of Ugandans?
I'm going to start where my brother ended.
Why are they pressing right
We're
now?
just bad-mannered. Ugandans are bad-mannered. Ugandans have got a problem with being honest. Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore told us that a man called Deng Xiaoping of China told him, if you want to make this country vibrant, have three words. One, have people who've got merit to lead the country. Two, that's meritocracy. Number two, have people who are pragmatic. And number three, have people who are honest. Just that one word, honest. If you expand that word, you get your answers. No matter what constitution you make, no matter what laws you make, if you have got people who are bad-mannered, it will never work. That's exactly what, so it's a behavior. We need psychologists, actually. Our behavior is bad. Full stop. And it is that behavior that creates the nuisance, and these people are talking about the symptoms of that nuisance which has been created.
So who is breeding this bad behavior?
All of us. I'm not going to say it is one person or the other. There's a lot of selfishness. Not all of us are angels, and I want us to really be very careful. When we were making the Constitution, the framers of the Constitutions came and said, we want a presidential system of government. And one of the reasons they gave, they say, Ugandans should choose their president. The president should not be chosen by somebody else. Yeah. So you go and vote for your president. A presidential system has the model behaves in a certain way. A presidential system is followed with a system of legislature, which is different from a parliamentary system. It is either you have a House of Representatives with the Senate, and that came about with a very big debate. And that one, you don't even have a government side or an opposition side. You have a majority and minority. All of them are legislators. But here, somebody said, no, we need a parliamentary system here, and we shall have a presidential system there. In fact, Ugandans are used to electing their president. And so when I hear you went to the citizens, I wonder what the citizens were saying. They don't want to elect their president anymore? That's the point they told us when we were in the Constitution. Another point, I don't want, if we are going to review this Constitution, I think our parliament, the way it is now, should not touch the parliament, should not touch the Constitution. Parliament, the way it is, we should choose another body to review our Constitution, which is not Parliament. And that body should be very clear. When that new Constitution which is reviewed should start, that's a different argument. Now, there's nothing wrong with the system everybody is talking about. A presidential system is good if you are going to behave yourself. A parliamentary system is good. Whether you took the Westminster or whether you take any of the other three our sister talked about. They're all good. The question is, which one of those systems are you going to behave yourself in? If we take a presidential system, then let it be a presidential system. And let's behave the way the system is supposed to operate. Because the problem is, a lot of our people pretend and lie. They talk about, they talk as if they've just come out of Harvard and Oxford, you know. And Ugandans, the 45 million people are being controlled by these 557 people to play around with this constitution? No. Time has come. Let's get a body. I don't know how we get hold of it, which will look into our constitution and review it. And let us not take bits and bits. Let's not be selective. Let's review the whole constitution.
Yes.
From the beginning to the end.
So are you saying after 29 years, this constitution is done?
No. Constitutions are reviewed.
Yeah.
Hey, these people who are lawyers would tell us that when a law was made a certain time, it was very useful that, but after some years, it is overtaken and therefore must be reviewed. There's nothing wrong with that. For example, I've asked my friends, you know, you talk about 5 years term limit. What is the basis of 5 years? Where do you get the 5 years from? How do you say it is 5 years? Not 4 years, not 3 years, not 2 years, not 6 years, not 7 years. Where do you get the thing for 5 years? We need now people who have got a little bit of intelligence to think and tell us. We don't want mediocres in this one. 2 terms limit. Yes? Why? Let's answer these questions. Let's not just put there saying, we want 2 limits, 5 limits. No. Tell me, why do you want 5 years? Give me good reasons. Why do you want two term limits of 5 years? Let's give people a good reason. Not just copy the American system, don't copy the British system, don't copy. You just tell us in Uganda, depending on the way we are, how many years should a government be in before we have another election? And what are the reasons? What are the reasons of the 2 terms? Is it the example of some people who have misbehaved? So we said, no, we must have 2 terms. For example, I'll tell you this, and all of you better know this. The age limit was refused by a lot of people when we were making the constitution, and it passed through the window. It is something we did not agree to very well. Because there's nowhere, anywhere in the world where a constitution has an age limit. What we have in there are biological issues which talk about the human body. If you become frail, or even when you have not reached a certain age, you are taken to the hospital and they say this man is incapable or capable. So let us go now and look at what I've been reading. We want this, we want that. If you want the South African system, because I saw it the other day when they were choosing the president, it's a parliamentary British system. Changed a little bit here and there. Right? What you're basically saying, you want your president to be elected by parliament. Really? Do we want that? When we had said we wanted a presidential system, we go from presidential system to a parliament electing our president? If that's what we want, don't review it that way. Let us look at the whole model. The presidential model, the parliamentary model, and we look at the various models, and then we look at Uganda as a country. This time we are not going to copy anything. We are going to say, wait a minute. If I have this model, will it work for our people? We are not going to base it on the politicians who are in parliament and in government. It will be the people of Uganda. Now let's get to another point. If you are going to review this constitution, I want it to be reviewed not only on the 3 arms of government. No, I want the whole thing to be reviewed, including the local government. The system of local government. 146 districts, and you call yourself, you call them districts? They are sub-counties. They can't even function. Let's have 15. Like, in fact, I was talking about the cities the other day, and I realized when people were proposing cities, they looked at the first 15 sub-regions we had, and they wanted each one of those sub-regions to have a city. If you want a city for each one of those sub-regions, the 15s we had independence with, then it's time now for me to go to the Constitution and say, no, let's have sub-regions instead of these districts. Reduce them from 146 to 15.
Okay.
That would, now, as I end, I want to say this. Please, there's nothing wrong with the parliamentary system, nothing wrong with the presidential system. The question is very simple. Do we sit down and review the Constitution like sane people and talk to the people of Uganda to understand what we're doing and stop taking advantage of a situation by taking one system or the other? In 1962, by the way, let me finish with this one. You know what the people did in that 1962 Constitution? They put there something called the federal government, semi-federal, and the other one. 3 of them in one Constitution. They started fighting. The other day you went and made an authority of Kampala City Council. On one side you made an authority, on the other side you left the old city council. What is happening? They are fighting.
Okay.
So this time when we are making a constitution, we don't want to fight. We want to understand it.
Thank you very much. Let's read some feedback that has come through. This is Jamil from Koboko. My opinion is that we need to have reforms based on our ideologies rather than copying most of these things from the developed countries. The serious problem faced by African countries is benchmarking democracy on other societies' ideologies rather than African ideas. That is why up-to-date Africans are struggling to have peace settled in the conflicts that they have there. Okay? I have one here. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. Excellent panel there. I think that we need a thesis written on the reforms suggested by Honorable Mao to be made to the ruling government. Opposition working with government should be the best ingredient for building a robust democracy. This is Mulindwa Rugumayo from Fort Portal. Okay. Good evening, panelists and Timothy. David Ebong here. Democracy is more than just a fair election. It's about citizens' value systems in a democratic culture. Listening, tolerating views, self-discipline, ethics, integrity, value, responsiveness to society goals. Do we as citizens have values that transcend the quality of leaders? Does our education develop these values? Okay. Finally, there are many proposals made that include presidential elections, but can presidential elections results be declared at the constituents and district level and not just at the national level? Finally, Honorable Mao's proposals should include, okay, I read that. And thank you for the show. This is Godfrey from West Nile. Thank you for the presentation. Let's take. Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on UBC Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Birete. I'm joined by Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, Honorable Luega Segona. I'm joined by Honorable Captain Francis Babu, and finally the Honorable Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, the Honorable Norbert Mao. A pressing message that has come through from someone in Kitugum says, thank you for allowing me to go through today. Okay. As we all know, elections always move Uganda to a whole different direction. Our Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, how best will he control or prevent the cheating of votes or in relation corruption in Uganda by 2026? I don't think he's talking about corruption today, but we'll bring him to talk about corruption some other time. Honorable Minister, let me come back to you. Your reforms here in the submissions that are here, when you look at them, how will they play out before 2026 elections? Because they're a game changer.
There was a time I came here,
yes,
Timothy, and I said, we are dealing with a 3-phase transition. Let me repeat. Because many people are worried about the next election. But we should talk about the destiny of Uganda. beyond the incumbent president, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So the first phase is where we are now, this debate here. In other words, I could call it the phase of problematization. Everybody must know the ailments. And that's why I would encourage everybody to speak freely about the ailments that afflict Uganda. For a disease to be treated, it must first be given a name. So citizens have got to speak up. People want a government which is accountable. People want value for money. They want their welfare taken care of. And they want clean elections. Remember, this government came into power through a guerrilla warfare. And the reason they gave for taking up arms is that the elections were rigged. So the elections are the heart of democracy. So anybody who rigs elections definitely is not interested in democracy, is not interested in peace either. Because sooner or later, there is only so much that people will take. That's why we're having this discussion. Sarah, I'm glad you reminded me of the Citizens' Compact on free and fair elections. It goes into all the detail of having a trusted electoral commission, because these are referees. The current law is criticized because those opposed to the way the electoral commissioners are appointed say it is not one of the players who should appoint a referee. That's basically what they are saying. So we must keep these debates alive. So we are in this phase of problematization. I actually foresee a more unified political terrain after the next election. I may not have enough evidence, but I think from the little that I see, to implement the things we are talking about, we need really a very, very unified political environment. I would even hazard and say we can end up with a government of national unity in the 12th Parliament. The things that we are talking about cannot be implemented by the kind of polarized country that we have now. The issues are extremely important. They don't even have to divide us. Actually, most people are divided simply because we have a president who has been in office for long. In fact, so we have got many people whose only platform is to remove President Museveni. So I believe that there are things that can be done before the next election. They will have to be very few. The majority, the major surgery, even on the constitution, will have to be done after the next election. That is the one I call the bridge. So we have this phase one, where we are agreeing on the issues we agree with, and even agreeing on the issues we disagree on. Then we go to build to the bridge. During that bridge, everybody should pull in one direction to really design the new Uganda. And I think there will be much less resistance to that effort. The resistance is being dictated by the elections. And that's why even the debate currently is overshadowed by anxiety over the elections. So when we go to the phase of bridge building, that's when we'll talk about fundamental issues like changing the electoral system, which cannot be done before the next election. But still, my duty is to tell you that those ideas are with us.
Let me ask
and then the new Uganda will come in the third phase.
You say some of these can come before. What are those that can come before? But also, What can bring us together to that bridge?
Number one is how we talk, the leaders, what we tell our people. I'm one of those who has been saying, you know, all of us have got to mind our language if we want political hygiene. The president of Uganda should not refer to our citizens, any citizen, as enemies of the country. Because there's no need to call you an enemy. If you are broken the law, there should be systems of dealing with you. But once I immediately draw a line and say, you know, you are an enemy. And the political actors in the opposition should not be referring to an elected government as a junta, you know. If you refer to where I sit as a junta, then I know that you don't recognize my legitimacy, and there's even no reason for me to debate with you. So we must mind our language, number one. Number two, we must not preach political untouchability. We cannot take it as a matter of pride that we don't care what other people think, and that we are proud that we cannot be seen even talking to those we disagree with. That way you have mutual pariahdom. So the government turns the opposition into a pariah, the opposition turns the government into a pariah. You know, like we have pariah states in the world, like Myanmar, North Korea. For them it is a matter of pride to be sanctioned, to be condemned. They take great pride in it. In fact, North Korea, I think if a month passes before the CNN and BBC talk about them, they release a missile, they aim it at South Korea, so that the CNN can write. For them it is a matter of pride. So the government party must not say we are proud that we are destroying the opposition, because the opposition is what the brake is. If those who talk like that should try driving a vehicle without brakes, just to know that, you know, you need a force that sometimes says slow down, look around you and check your surroundings. And then the third thing is continuous dialogue. I said untouchability, that's almost the same thing. We really need to have the spirit of talking to each other. The other day I saw a video of the Honorable Bed Bwanika circulating, just because he went as a parliamentarian of the Agriculture Committee to talk about the need to protect coffee farmers by keeping the institution that is promoting coffee farming, UCDA. But all his political enemies on all sides were saying he has gone to cross to the NRM and that kind of thing. That toxic kind of talk does not create the kind of environment in which we can discuss this kind of things. And unfortunately, it has even infected the radio talk shows and so on. Lastly, the reason why I'm very confident about my three-phase transition is because I know the history of Uganda. Ask yourselves, what are the contours of power in Uganda? Before you climb a hill, you must know its contours. If you drive to Kisoro, Kabale, the road has to go a certain way by force. It doesn't matter whether the distance is going to be longer or shorter. It is dictated by the terrain. We have a history of violence. We have not yet addressed those grievances that people have. Many parts of Uganda are still grieving. So in that bridge, that phase 2, is where we are really going to have to do the hard work. So, a direct answer to your question of what reforms are possible before the next elections and important. The first one is the electronic voting, which I said hit a snag in the cabinet. The proposal for parliamentary system, that has been a long-standing proposal of the Democratic Party, but now it is being discussed in the context of President Museveni. Opponents who want to bastardize the debate, they say the president is now of advanced age, he can no longer move. He doesn't need to move even. He has all his arms and legs all over the country. He is moving. So that argument is actually very weak. I don't think anybody is more mobile than the president because he's facilitated to move. He doesn't have to suffer the bad roads. He can move. The question is, we should debate that proposal on its true merits. And I don't think the countries where the president is elected by parliament are any less democratic. Would you say that Uganda is therefore more democratic than South Africa just because Ramaphosa has been elected by the parliament? The question should rather be, how do you elect that parliament itself? In South Africa, it is through a list system, proportional representation. Each party publishes a list, files it with the Electoral Commission, and based on the proportion of the votes, they send members to parliament. I can tell you, if we had proportional representation, NUP would have many MPs outside Buganda. But because of the first past the post, you find that NUP is restricted to Busoga and Buganda, and therefore gets presented as a parochial regional party, which it is not. It has a national support also in many parts. NRM or UPM rather would have got 5 members of parliament in 1980 if we had used the proportional representation, and DP definitely would have formed the government if it was proportional representation, and NRM would have more seats in Buganda if it actually was under proportional representation. We proposed this idea in our iPod summit. The president is not totally opposed to it. He said it should be studied further. But I can tell you that as far as universal suffrage for electing the president is concerned, the president is strongly in favor of it. Me, I'm in favor of, personally, and the party I lead, we're in favor of parliamentary democracy based on proportional representation. And I believe we will win the debate during the second phase of this transition in the bridge building phase. I think we are capable of winning because it is cheaper. People like my sister Sarah Birete, who speak the truth without perfuming it, will finally be elected to parliament because they will be on a party list and they will be ranking very high. As matters stand now, you don't stand a chance because you are going to go and tell people the unpalatable truth and they'll just throw you out. We will be able to get people like Dr. Magi Kigozi into parliament. But a compromise of that is to allow for special seats that may even be nominated. We can put that. That is how a leader of a political party who becomes a runner-up can get to parliament and therefore resolve that problem which people are haggling about right now, about
leader of opposition.
About who is the leader of opposition. It can solve that problem. That way, Benedicto Chiwanuka would have nominated himself into cabinet, therefore not having to wrestle with the Bataringaya, and that way the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi would not have any rope pulling with the whoever he has nominated as his hand in the parliament. So I want to go on record that for the time being, the majority of Ugandans are worried about Parliament, and I think rightly so, because if Parliament is have given that power, and the way in which it is elected is not very satisfactory, there is rigging, there is this and that. Let's say if there's corruption, you know, that's how a foreign country can easily buy a president by facilitating the electoral college. So our proposal is based on conviction, and we started that in the 60s, before we knew of the NRM and President Museveni. Now the debate will be determined by what goes on inside the ruling party. Last weekend I was having a discussion with a high-ranking person in this country, and we agreed that we have two NRMs. We have NRMO, the organization, then we have NRMG, the one which controls the government. So the O and the G sometimes don't move together.
So which one are you part of, the G or the O?
It's not in NRM.
The one he has a cooperation agreement with, the G or
the O?
The O. Okay.
Because the cooperation agreement was not signed by President of Uganda. It was signed by chairman of the National Resistance Movement.
How did you end up in government?
That's the G.
That's the G.
Exactly.
Let me come to Dr. Sarah. Doctor, for anyone to test water, you don't step in with both feet. This test that is going on of reforms, when you look at 2016 electoral violence, and you look at 2021, numbers are thrown around, 54 people lost their lives, 100 people. It seems like violence keeps escalating year on year. When you look now, people who have already gone up, posters are up, all these things are there.
Everything?
And the Honorable Minister has made suggestions.
Pardon?
How's work?
Age limit and the term limits.
I'm
This
now
was the
settled
testing
down.
of how they came in. What is the spirit behind this? What is being
You were in
tested
cabinet.
to be brought to Ugandans?
It is a headache.
Let me first comment on the violence in elections and the role of the security forces. It's actually the elephant in the room. Honorable Segona has talked about it. And if we had any low-hanging fruits in these reforms, in my view, we would look at 5 issues. What Honorable Mao calls the first phase in his 3-phase
Problematization.
terminology. So if I had a choice in the first phase, I would choose 5 issues. One is the role of security forces in elections,
306.
especially the army. We know the police has a clear role in elections.
0752
The army doesn't.
206.
The army presumably
206.
comes in on the invitation
306.
of the police.
I'm
But
available.
if you talk to police
send the
away
message.
from the cameras, they will tell you
They're
they've
online.
never invited the army. So we need to resolve the confusion caused by the army in elections. The violence you talked about, the killings in 2020 November, no accountability to date. The disruption of political activities throughout the campaigns, especially those of the opposition, by the army. So we need, if Parliament could help us say, of course we know our security forces cannot be in every polling station on voting day. If we can determine, and I know there is a difference, you know, a clear diversion between the law and practice, but we've got to start somewhere. And that's what you're telling. Let's have the law. Whether this law is followed today or not, one day it will be followed. And even those who violate the law, one day they can be held accountable in a different jurisdiction. So you need to say that the army has no role in elections except if war breaks up. Then to say, in the event that the police officers and constables are not enough, who should supplement the police Can we say then that we shall recruit election constables from civilians, not from inviting the army? And keep the army in the barracks where they can vote and they are away from our elections, except if war breaks up, because that's their mandate. If there is no war, let them keep in the barracks and leave Ugandans to determine their leaders. I wish we could achieve that, at least on paper. Whether it can be followed in practice is another matter. Then, can we have, number 2, campaign financing?
A campaign.
The money we use in elections is obscene. Somebody spending 2 to 3 billion in a parliamentary race. If we turn our elections into a grand auction, we have no democracy. The bidder takes it all. So now we just have mafias buying elections. And that's not a democracy. We need to deal with this monster of army in on money in elections. Number 3 is the issue of course, of digitalization of elections. Technology is a two-edged sword. If used well, it will improve trust and transparency in our elections. But it can also be manipulated to change the will of the people. So we need to safeguard, and we are already using technology. It's not that it is something we are debating. The Supreme Court took note in the Amama Mbaba's petition that we are using technology with no legal framework. So it's not that we are not using technology. The debate can be to what extent should we use technology. But we are using technology in our elections.
But when you talk about technology and there is no internet, like the last 2 elections, and the
internet shut down. It's
yes.
not that there is no internet.
The internet shut down. Then we have the comment by the president saying he has evidence that with the technology that 1 million votes were stolen. Can this digital era really give us the results that you're talking about?
Hackers.
Well, I think I want to still assume that the comments by the president.
Do we have the framework in place to manage it?
We don't have a legal framework. That's what the Supreme Court took note of 80 years ago. We are using technology in elections with no proper legal framework. 80 years ago, the Supreme Court took note of that. They directed the Attorney General that we should enact a legal framework and regulations for use of technology. Why is it very important? In that petition, the petitioners wanted to use backup data to examine how voters voted in selected voting places, polling stations. The Electoral Commission told the court that they did not have technology that keeps backup. Of course, everybody doubted that submission. But in the event that you don't have regulation, where it says you must keep this data, the equipment used must have backup, and you must keep it for either 10 years, so that whoever wants to audit a particular election can audit it. So when you don't have this legal framework, then you deny people of increased transparency in elections, of evidence to use, critical evidence to use in such petitions, and so many other things. Honorable Anyoto talked about a faster way of counting and transmitting and announcing elections. Of course. So we need to have a legal framework to know that in our elections, you can use technology for ABC functions, and there should be backup data for ABC, so that in the event that there is a need to criticize or examine that data, it is availed. In the Kenyan elections, we saw the petitioners were asking to open the servers so that they can audit how Kenyans voted. The technicality that came in was that the service provider had not signed up that they would avail servers. These are issues that a legal framework must state in black and white. What is it that we are dealing with? What can be retrieved? What are the do's and don'ts in use of technology? We don't have a legal framework, and it's very embarrassing. As I conclude, I see that your body language, my time could be running out. The first issue that we should achieve in this election is a transparent national tally center. Why am I talking about this? I have observed 3 elections in Uganda. The National Tare Center, the major occupants at our National Tare Center are the UPDF, police, prisons. Then you will see a few members of the international community, NRM agents, opposition agents are rare at the National Tare Center. In the last election, civil society were denied accreditation. We couldn't access the National Tare Center. I saw media who were asking what the source of results that were being read, and there were no answers. The computer screens at the National Tare Center are always empty. Nobody sees results as they come in, results as they are being tabulated, and the process of announcing. As Ugandans, we should be able to see presidential results as they come in per district, as they are tabulated, and as they go to the announcing table. We should witness this process if we have elections or genuine elections in this country.
And before I get to Honorable Onyoto, I asked a question about age limit, term limits. The testing of the water was like this. What is coming with these reforms, if you look at it?
You know, unfortunately, those constitutional reforms, first the lifting of term limits came in with a change of movement to multi-party system. And it was intended, or the affected persons then, it was only one individual who could have been affected had we not lifted the term limits. Come age limit, same story. Only one individual was to be affected by that provision of the law. Even when Ugandans, like Honorable Mao has said, Ugandans are suspicious because of a failed political transition, you can't blame them. We saw President Joe Biden in the US being told to step down because he was around the same age as our president. And we have just celebrated the birthday. So I can't blame Ugandans for suspecting that even a change from presidential to parliamentary system could benefit one individual. You can't blame them.
Let me come to Honorable Lydia. How do we diffuse the tensions that are already building up in the country? And these reforms look good, they sound good. How do we diffuse them to have a peaceful election?
In my opinion, I do not see any tensions because most of the debate has been around, only that it has been resurfaced because of also the timing. If we have elections next year, starting next year, and it is just the countdown is 12 months, I think we should have a minimum package to deliver in next year's elections, and then the people like Mao who have phases to do what, they can now
start after.
They can start that story after elections. You can't mix things. I'm being very honest.
Yeah.
You're going to mess people up. You're going to, unless you want to be the diversionary. It is, we don't have money, even for the minimum calendar that the Electoral Commission has given us. What the Electoral Commission has given us is the minimum to deliver 2026 elections within the legal framework they have. They have suspended any anticipation of any reforms. Now you are bringing reforms that are heavily having financial implications, but also legal implications. And first of all, they are less to look like they're the interests of the people, but they are also political actors who want to say where they will maneuver, shortcuts where they will maneuver through to survive in the next scheme of things of the politics of their country. People are putting in and say, where will I be when Museveni leaves? Everybody is, whether you say you are fighting Museveni or not, is in the mind and the back of the mind. There is a campaign to say the president is going, you know, he must to go. And therefore, when he's going, me, where will I be? You see? Where will I be? That there's also, and you cannot remove it from them. It's a natural thing to politically want to see where you will be as a national actor or as a local. But I think that let's de-risk the general elections next year by delivering what we need for next year and not mix it with a bigger agenda.
What can we put in place to deliver that election?
Let's help the Independent Electoral Commission deliver the roadmap they've given us. That's for me, that's enough. Because first of all, we should look for money, cause civic education, improve on the processes of what they've given us. The story of Mao's phases should wait because they're not tenable the next 12 months. Realistically, but if you don't be realistic, you can bring them. This parliament, you can deliver anything you want, they will deliver it. But I don't know whether it will work for us or they mix with the next general elections. Let's leave the current electoral laws of Uganda the way they are. Let's support the Independent Electoral Commission. We pray that the Maos of Uganda still remain alive and alert and the position they hold, so that they can now, after 2026, take us through those phases they are talking about. Because I do not see us discussing the phases he's putting on table now. When they've been with us for the last 10 or so many years, there's an impact. I like that document. It looked so big, but it hasn't worked now. It cannot work within the 12 months. When the Electoral Commission of Uganda should have tabled the calendar with these provisions already inbuilt. You cannot table a national calendar. It is now moving with all the bad tires. Eh? It is not. Then you want to add, overload it. It will burst. It will knock. Already, like I've said, they don't have resources. There's no civic education, so they're supposed to compare and analyze the voter update vis-a-vis so that they make sense with the national census. Because you're going to begin debating numbers. You say the Electoral Commission has a different number, but we are also now reading what does the national census results look like. So they must reconcile all these things. And they have been telling us they are behind schedule, they don't have resources. So if you ask me, I would like to request Mao, because now, for me, I'm seeing Mao today, and please allow me to see you as the Minister for Justice, not those many other things that you hold in the country. As a Minister of Justice, the best you can do for us is help the Independent Electoral Commission of Uganda deliver the calendar they've given us, because one, we don't have time. Two, we have a constitutional responsibility to deliver in elections 2026, January moreover. So 12 months. But if you are going now to add other things, we are going to be confused. Actually, you will contribute to the confusion now.
How do we...
And let me tell you, I was looking at the Director of Parliament. The census of this year has issued a very big statement about the young people of Uganda. The Constitution of Uganda talks about being the age of the young people is 30 years, 30 years of age. So they are really the majority of the country, almost 70% of our countries, there are people below the age of 30. So if there are any reforms to make younger people contribute more, but again, if you look at the director of this 11th Parliament, over 90% of the members of Parliament are not 40. So actually, those some of them are redundant. But that's for another day. Because for me, really, if there's anything I want to take away from UBC this evening, is let's support the Electoral Commission, deliver the calendar they have already released. Yeah. Let's not add or subtract. Let's just help them raise resources, or even review and tell them don't reorganize them, and they deliver the elections. Meanwhile, these ambitious phases should come
after
away from what the Electoral Commission has given us.
And that's why I want to ask you, because you're talking about the Electoral Commission, how do we ring fence it? Already there are suggestions of 5 new cities there. How do we ring fence it against all these other decisions that affect it in one way or another?
Which other decisions?
Like the 5 cities being suggested to
That's what I want Honorable Mao to work on as a Minister for Constitutional Affairs. At least to head he's the political head of the Electoral Commission. So I thought that he should focus on that. Is he willing to support them to deliver the 5 cities or tell them to be pending? He has a bigger mandate, a legal opinion. His opinion would matter on such matters to help the calendar and the roadmap of the Electoral Commission be delivered. But if he's going to add his story of the phases, I don't know where he's going to, because now we don't know in what capacity he's talking these things.
Thank you very much.
But is the political head of the general elections of Uganda 2026. And already they've run behind schedule because their electoral calendar is not as resourced in line with their budget.
Thank you. Honorable Segona, how do we build a robust democracy in this country, even as we look at its future?
Now, obviously, the way you're phrasing your question tends to lock me in a certain direction, but I decline to fall in the trap. First of all, if you make any false accusation against this government, that accusation will only be that this government has focus. Because if you have a minister tabling amendments to the public before they are tabled in cabinet, it is a sign of frustration. I know a thing or two about the Honorable Norbert Mao. I have worked with him and under him for some years. I know the pain that he holds on his heart, especially with regard to the amendments that he has presented to the public. I think what Norbert is doing is to be the Pontius Pilate of today. To say, for me,
he was washing his hands.
I've washed my hands clean. If you want to kill this man, you kill him knowing
that I've
he's
done
an
my
innocent
part.
man.
Yeah.
For me, I'm innocent. I am a fair judge, but my hands are tied. That's what Norbert is communicating to the country. And if you're not able to see that, you have a problem. The first, I think he was right when he said, as a citizen lawyer, when he said the duty of the Supreme Court is to inquire, and that the Supreme Court in 2016 was disgusted that the laws are inadequate, the time is inadequate, and those do not afford them the ability and the facilitation they need to inquire into a presidential election petition. But the same Supreme Court in the year 2021 was able to say, no, even when you have that evidence, you are late, don't bring it before us. So we will not inquire into that evidence. I want to rejoin on what the Honorable Francis Babu said. This parliament of today, in its shape, don't touch our constitution. You see, one way or the other, and I think this is where I get trapped or entrapped. Honorable Norbert Mao says, if you do not recognize me as an elected government, you call me a junta, then I also call you enemies. You see, I have a right not to recognize you as a government by saying you rigged my election. I have a right to describe you the way I see you. For example, if citizens are disappearing under your watch and hand, citizens are being killed and maimed, what name do you want me to give you? All in the name of reconciliation and talking. I am happy to talk. I can even speak to Joseph Kony, assuming he is what he's depicted to be. But the first thing is, you, as a person claiming to be elected, have a duty to put in place an environment for talking. I mean, Honorable Norbert Mao was the first minister to say, in my first 100 days, those politically persecuted people will be out. The next minister to say that was the man who said, now I'm a minister. Is it for young children, young people or something?
Youth.
Eh?
Youth and children.
Youth and children. They are going to be out. He even came and said, on Youth Day, the president is coming to make a pronouncement. You're going to see them out. The next thing we saw, or closest to that, is to say, they have been forced to sign amnesty. So about the environment, forget. Honorable Babu, about your parliament. This is the parliament you have. And there is no way you can divorce parliament from making laws, whatever the shape. It could even be worse in the next parliament. The few people you're talking about calling reasonable today, calling knowledgeable today, may not be there. I mean, parliament will have to do its work. I agree that we segregate those matters that require first constitutional amendment. There are those that do not require constitutional amendment. There are those that may require referendum. We should go for them. I mean, following the well laid down procedure. The frustration I have seen in the minister tonight and my sister in their sake, that, oh, unfortunately, don't mix those things which Norbert says people are preoccupied with the next election, and rightly so. But Uganda does not stop at the next election, and I agree with him. The first thing is to accept that this is a concession, that one, you have a bad government, you have an unfocused government that is seeking to think about doing things that ought to have been done 15 years ago. In other words, you have a government that has been sleeping on job. If you make that concession, I will congratulate you, Honorable Norbert Mao, tonight, that probably you coming has changed the terrain. When you talk, I think colleagues have been mixing civic education with voter education, because civic education under the Constitution is the mandate of the Human Rights Commission.
Human Rights Commission.
But they have not been doing it, and whenever they've been appearing for us in Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, or even in PAC, the argument is that we are not given money to do that job because it is not a priority of this government. Your government prefers dealing with people that are ignorant and therefore not able to understand things they are meant to understand. And when you compare us with those countries which are using what you call the proportional representation, the parliamentary system, etc., I mean, you lose the point. You miss the point. If they are not sensitized, or they are not educated, and they are not about to be educated. I mean, if you have somebody coming to swear in as LC3 chairman and is not able to make oath, tell me how, with your meager resources, you're going to do civic education, and within 1 year people know what they are doing. Now, there are certain things that do not even require amending the law, that have no rocket science. The involvement of the army. Yeah. Do you want to tell me that these generals that are commanding and commandeering people into election violence need any civic education? You a general, you a brigadier, you are a commanding officer. Do you need any civic education to understand that you're not supposed to do ABCD? Do you, if you are an RDC, if you're a deputy RDC stroke RCC, do you need any civic education to know your job? If you need civic education to know that these are your boundaries, then we have a problem, starting with the appointing authority. Now, when you have to be taught on basic things, to me, I mean, I don't even want to waste time talking to such a person. Now, is it difficult, is it rocket science to agree that we declare results, say, at the district, so that they are not changed between Lira and Kampala? Is that rocket science? Do you need any rocket science to know that you need basic infrastructure? If you have a presiding officer who signs results under duress, I mean, do you need to change the law to make provision for that? So I think finally what I can say, Timothy,
yes.
One, it begins with you and me. First, to know that this is my country. Unless we have people ruling this country and they are not Ugandans. I think one day, was it the 7th Parliament, we were there when Livingstone Okello said, in fact, we do not have a government. We just have a group of men and women ruling this country in conspiracy. So unless we have conspirators that have taken charge of our country, and that have no desire whatsoever to improve the very basic infrastructure for a free and fair election. There are things which do not require law. There are things which do not require money.
Okay. Thank you very much. Lastly, Captain Francis Babu, how do we build a Uganda for all?
Very important. Like I said earlier on, we have to be honest when we are speaking. When I talked about Parliament earlier on, I went back to when the Constitution was made for this country. I was in NRC, and legal notice gave us powers to pass that Constitution. NRC could have debated that Constitution and passed it. But the people in Uganda said, no, wait a minute. This NRC, we are not very happy with it. Can we please get some people to do it? And yes, we did. We in NRC passed the law and formed the Constituent Assembly, which was an independent body, and gave us a constitution. I am not saying this because I have anything else I have to do. My brother said, if I don't like the government, I have a right to say I don't like it. I also have a right to say I don't like this parliament.
Yes.
Are we clear?
Yes.
Yes. Don't think that parliament has got angels. No. I've got a reason why I'm saying this parliament should not play with this constitution. We are not happy with the way things are being done. And I don't want to go into what the accusations are against this parliament. That's not my work. But we are talking about reviewing this constitution, and we are saying if we want to do it well, the body has to be independent. Full stop. And whatever you like, you can say. Now, actually we did. If you go to the Hansard and you look very carefully, I must give that NRC an A1 by saying, yes, we accept, we'll pass the law. And those in NRC who feel they would like to be part of the constitutional making, they would go for the elections to be sent as delegates. Full stop. Our problem is not everything that is being said. Are we building our country? Can we have that in our mind, that we are building a country and we should stop being selfish because we want to be in government or in parliament or whatever it is? How do we build our country? How do we build our parliament? How do we build our executive? How do we build our judiciary? I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying we're supposed to build them stone by stone. It's not going to come out of the blue. And we are not going to do it by copying. We've got to build. And that building is extremely important. Our political behavior and propaganda in this country is gone completely gaga. In other words, we say whatever we want, and most of it is wrong. I find it very difficult for a man who is a lawyer, who has not proved anything, to accuse anybody. And actually, I brought this. The other time, they said the election had been rigged, we're going to court. Somebody goes to court a few days after, he says, I withdraw my case, I'm going to the People's Parliament.
People's Court.
People's Court. We have never proved anything.
And he didn't give you a reason for that?
Maybe he gave me a reason of propaganda. Or maybe he did not. If he had proved that they had done that to him, I would be with him. But until today, I have no proof.
But prove before somebody who says don't bring your evidence.
But when you were talking, I kept quiet.
No, because you have now accused me.
No. I kept quiet.
Gentlemen.
No, he has now accused me.
I want to give you a point to come back to.
No.
Captain Babu, please complete your submission.
No. He's been accusing people of things which are wrong. And he's a lawyer.
And the
lawyer knows that a case has to be proved, has to go to court, the judgment has to be given, and we shall follow that judgment. There was no judgment. There is no judgment, apart from accusing leaders of the court. And propaganda. Propaganda well built. You know, these people have got a cassette they have set up. They accuse everybody. Chief Justice is this. Chief Justice is having tea with so-and-so. These cassettes they have set up is propaganda. They're accusing judges. They're accusing everybody. I want you to prove a case to me of somebody who has done something. I'll support you. But if you don't prove anything, it's allegation. So, and I'm going to show you where it is allegation. Prove to me. There are people here whose elections have been annulled by court, and they have given a reason, and elections have been held the next day. We've had one where people went to court, and the court gave certain things that should be done. And you've been quoting them here today. Now, this is what I'm trying to say. Don't go on propaganda. Propaganda alone will not change anything. What is going to change is to prove to us what you say.
Okay.
There are people, and I know it. I've been a victim of rigging in this town, and involves certain people. I've never stood up to say.
And what did the court tell you?
And how it was done. All right? And let me tell you, if we go on like this gentleman of mine, because he's worried I might even talk about him.
Talk about me. Be free. Talk about me.
I want to say.
I'm around. Talk about me.
I want to say this. They should stop propaganda and bring out facts.
Okay.
And the cheating of election is not one-sided. The political class here are all involved in rigging elections, and they do it in different styles. So, and they are given money by people within the system to go and rig these elections. And he is given money to go and rig so and so out, given money to rig so and so out, and they do it. So let us not be jokers here.
Okay.
And being threatened. No. Let me finish with this. It's very, very, very important. If we want to, where you were asking, how do we go forward? If we want to go forward, we all have to be honest. And this is the honesty is this. What has gone wrong, most of us know. Let's put it right. And to put it right, we need to be fair and listen to each other. But if you think you are a Superman, and you are going to have a cassette of propaganda continuously played, it will not be accepted. Because this propaganda cassette is going all the time. In fact, it's like a spoiled record. It's the same thing over and over again. Let's reason on each issue. And even people in government who are doing the wrong things should be told that what you are doing is wrong. And we should give facts when we are talking about them. And I'll give you an example where I'm saying this. A few minutes ago, my brother said he saw people in the army stuffing boxes. Ballots.
Yes.
Stuffing ballots. I waited in court to hear which army group were stuffing boxes and where they were. I've never heard about it.
Okay.
I only hear it on that cassette. Okay. Now I want, no, this is very important. The army here has got areas where they elect in Kampala here. They elect at Makindye. What is that hill called? Kololo Hill?
Mbuya.
Summit View.
Mbuya. And then they elect near the All Saints Church. There are elections there. If there is anything that has happened there, nobody has ever taken it to court. And nobody has ever proved that these people have done it. But there's a sing-song that army people are permanently stuffing boxes, I don't think that's fair, even to our army people. I think what is fair is this. If something has been done, I agree. If it has been done, and there's a proof they have done it, I think they should be taken to court, and they should prove that these people have done this.
Okay. Captain Babu, time is fast spent.
Yes, I agree. And I would like to thank you there.
Yes.
But this business of stuffing boxes and army, and let me end up with the army also. We have 45,000 policemen in this country. We have to go and look after all boxes. If you don't have enough policemen, what do? Either you increase the policemen or you hire a special group to support the policemen. If you don't have that, who do you go for security? Who is next?
But Captain Babu, the last we did constables and we did LDUs. What did the army need to do?
No. Are they enough, even when you add them on?
Okay, time is fast spent. Let me start with Dr. Sarah. Our parting shots in 2 minutes. I know Honorable Sogona will respond in his too. Your 2 minutes, over to Honorable Lydia, then Honorable Segona, Captain Francis Babu, and finally the Honorable Minister. Your 2 minutes.
Elections are a foundation of democracy. They give people a chance to determine the fate of their nations. Voting is a sovereign right, enshrined and entrenched under Article 1 of our Constitution. Power belongs to the people who will exercise it through regular, free and fair elections, and they will elect all their leaders. I don't think Uganda has attained the level of maturity that would require a proper functioning where a parliament elects a president. I don't support that proposal at this moment. I'm also calling for free and fair elections. The people who disrupt our sovereign rights to vote should stop. Everybody should cast their vote in peace and have it counted, and let that vote be valued. As I conclude, I agree with Honorable Wanyoto that we need to fund the Electoral Commission to do its work, but also the people who overrun the Electoral Commission during elections, they need to respect the people of Uganda and leave the Electoral Commission to do its work.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Honorable Lydia, your parting shots.
The roadmap for the Electoral Commission is out. That should be the debate so that we stay the course, we remain focused. It's just 1 year, and give Ugandans a chance to clear the ground, look for resources, do and focus on that so that we deliver the next election. But I also want to support Mao to be able to face the agenda, because it's good for Uganda. It should be beyond elections, but shouldn't be mixed in this calendar, because to me this calendar is too important, because it's also bordering where we want to go as a country. Every election should be building to a cleaner, promising processes for governance in Uganda. We should be building, it's a building block. So let's not meddle, add a lot of stuff. I mean, and Mao should know that now he's a minister. What he says has brought me here in the midnight, because he posted the things not even in the cabinet, but because he's a minister. Yes. He's also a big man in the country. His signature matters. What he says matters. So I would like to request him that he is the political head of the Electoral Commission. We are all looking at him to deliver. We are all looking at him to deliver the next elections. Let him focus on the calendar, and if there is any amendments, it should be in line with what the Electoral Commission is saying. And if he has other issues he wants to deliver to direct the country, they should be faced, but through cabinet, at least the ones where he sits for now, so that we know that these have been what we call in NRM the right forum. Because we are discussing his post, we don't know whether it is a post because he's Mao the Ugandan that we know, or Mao the husband of the Mugore now, or Mao the president of DP.
We need another Bagole quickly.
Okay.
So now, but it has caused the pub, it has gone viral. It has brought me here today to discuss. And yet I would like really to focus on the Electoral Commission, because I'm an interested party of the election calendar in Uganda, for my party, for myself, but also for the country. And it's a building block to cleaner and fairer, because it's our time. If we do not campaign to have a fair and growing electoral process that works for Uganda, our children will blame us. So I think he has brought a lot. It's like when you're cooking food, and then you begin adding in a lot of spices and what, you are going to make us get turbulence. So
thank you very much.
Please realign your thoughts and let us know when you are posting as who.
Honorable Segona.
I agree with anyone who says we should facilitate the Electoral Commission to do its work, in whatever shape it is. I don't agree with anyone who tells Norbert Mao don't interfere, don't talk about anything today. My thinking is, bring your things on table. Let's discuss and segregate what is possible to be done in 30 days, we do it. What we cannot do before the next general election, we reserve it, but we cannot fail to cane you for having failed to bring that thing 15 years ago.
The
And now that
timing.
and now that you're the face of the monster that has failed to deliver
Is
this.
the political head.
That's the point I'm making.
So we are now looking up to
That the monster that has failed, and I mean the monster government that has failed to bring us these reforms for the last 15 years. So accept your canes, but we help you and facilitate you to do what is possible to be done.
Okay.
I agree with Captain Babu about the name calling, and I think I'm disciplined enough to know what to do, what to say, when, and how. But nothing stops me from complaining when, for the first time in the history of this country, a candidate who has 30 days to present his petition is locked up in his house, his phone is switched off, internet is switched off. He comes to tell you, I have brought evidence of soldiers' ballot stuffing. You tell him, no, I will not inquire into that. And Captain Babu says, you are politicking, that is propaganda. In 2006, Captain Babu lost an election for Kampala Central. He complained, went for a recount and lost it, went for a petition and lost it. He continues to complain today that he was rigged out. And I say, yes, because if in his mind is satisfied that he was rigged out, but the court did not give him justice, it is his right, as long as he does not insult a judge.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and have a good morning.
Captain Babu, your
I,
parting shots.
I think any review of the Constitution is important. We should review the Constitution. Whether you do it in phases, whether you do it rightly, the whole Constitution, that's fine. Now that is important, we should look at it, but we should look at it very seriously. We should not look at it quickly and make mistakes, because we shall go back to the same boat. We should sit down and look at each of these things that we want to amend and look at them very seriously.
Okay.
And before I finish, I'd like to thank my friend for reminding me about my election. But there's a group called SUBI, and he's a member of it.
That's true.
And that's the group that played the game. And the game is known.
It's the group to which you lost the election and the petition.
No, you
Okay.
stole. You
Gentlemen,
stole
let's
the
have the
election.
Honorable
You
Minister.
see,
have his
did you go
parting
to
shots.
court?
Honorable Minister, over to you. Your parting shots.
Captain Babu said it in passing, but whatever we are talking about is really about nation building. And nation building is continuous. I want to promise that we are going to restart the debate on electronic voting. We have been seeing how the Electoral Commission can make the election less expensive. We believe that we don't have to restrict the first phase of election only to president and MPs. Some other positions can also be elected on that same day. There are ways of doing it. We have come up with proposals which we want the Electoral Commission to give us feedback on, to color code ballot papers. You can color code so that even an illiterate can know that this color is for the president and it matches the color of the ballot box. You may need to get all the ballot papers at the same station. You don't need very many presiding officers. We must not act as if we are a very rich country in terms of cash.
If we were in court, I would object that in a rejoinder, the minister is introducing a new concept we have not debated.
No, because I tell you that we must innovate based on our experience. That is really the truth. Look at why are we not able to elect LC1s? Because we can't afford it. Why are we not electing the women councillors? Because we can't afford it. We need to be innovative in how we vote to make elections simpler. But otherwise, to console the Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, these proposals are not Mao proposals.
I know.
I have a compilation of proposals from citizens of course, they are now associated with me because I'm the minister. But the proposals that we are going to front load will be the most important and urgent ones. But when we reach that bridge phase, which I've talked about, then we must really work together as Ugandans to build the new Uganda.
Okay, let me just read two messages. A lot of messages have come through, but let me just read two. One comes in from Honorable John Ken Luchamuzi, President of the Conservative Party.
The man.
The man. The right to vote for the president, the right to vote the president in person is a fundamental right strictly derived from the right to self-determination. And to move away from it is call for mandatory referendum there, okay? Finally, there is Dr. Muhammad Tusime, PhD here, says this reform is the most significant lifeline that will significantly safeguard Uganda's future. It entails simplicity to transition, it widens democratic values amongst all stakeholders. This reform is one of the keys that will stop anyone from overstaying in power, especially the president right now. I think he's talking about term limits there. I want to thank the panel, gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for coming. And we'll